Water is all around us, especially here in Florida. Have you ever stopped to think about water laws? Here to talk about that is Professor Robert Abrams from FAMU College of Law. Thanks for joining us on Legal Connections, Professor Abrams.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Water law. I first heard about it as a student at FAMU Law, and my classmates were ecstatic to be in your class, and so I couldn't understand it. I had never heard of it, so I look forward to you sharing with us. First of all, what does water law encompass?
Well, there's two aspects to water law, although one, water quality, is usually conjoined with the environmental law class more than with the water law class. The water law class is more about water allocation and property rights and use of water. So who gets to use the water? And so the water law class specializes in that, although at times quality requirements of uses become a part of the allocation process, but it's not the dominant issue. The dominant issue is how much and who gets to use it.
Okay, and so the quality of the water are there separate laws affecting quality?
There really are.
Okay.
And there are two major laws at the federal level. The Clean Water Act, which was passed in 1972, which talks about what you can discharge into the waters and limits not only toxic pollutants, but also conventional pollutants, what things that would come from your sewage treatment plants and those sorts of things. But also there's the Safe Drinking Water Act, which focuses not only on drinking water that you draw from surface sources, but even more so on drinking water drawn from underground sources.
It's very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating, because I don't think most people even contemplate.
No, and the Safe Drinking Water Act is the one that is probably more pertinent to each of our everyday lives, because they have maximum contaminant levels that are set with reference to protecting human health. And so the water you drink, as long as you get it from a supplier, I think that supplies 30 units or more, they're subject to this federal statute about water quality standards. So.
And how is climate change affecting water
well,
law?
Climate change hasn't had that great an impact on quality, but on the quantity side, climate change is going to be driving massive changes in the way the United States and other countries operate. Because up until now, water supply has been based on assumptions about how much variability there is in the weather, wet years and dry years. And what's called stationarity is that over the period of history, the weather varies every year, obviously, but it varies within a predictable range. What's happening with climate change, because of the warmer atmosphere, it holds more water, which means more water can be transported. Every degree centigrade is about 7% more water vapor carrying capacity. So what that really says is all of our infrastructure that was built with reference to the old level of variability, wets are going to be wetter, dries are going to be drier. And we're already beginning to see the evidence of that. So the droughts are longer, they're more protracted, and then of course events like Hurricane Harvey, where the hurricane stalls out and drops 40 inches of rain on Houston in a couple of days. There's going to be more events like that. And similar, these things called atmospheric rivers. That's where the ocean, the evaporation off the oceans is carried in a fairly predictable stream, kind of like the jet stream. But this is the jet stream carrying more water because it's warmer. And then when it hits some colder air and loses its carrying capacity, the potential for flooding is greater. But by the same token, when the jet streams move and things like that, it means there might be more protracted droughts because the moisture air is flowing to somewhere else. And we're already seeing that in the American Southwest. A good example is the Colorado River. In the early 20th century, when they divided up who was going to get to use the river, they were assuming that the annual flow would be about 15 million acre feet. Well, it turns out the annual flow they were measuring at a high flow period, and now that combined with climate change, we're looking at maybe a 20% decrease in a river that serves 40 million people.
Wow.
So changes are coming, and the West and the Southwest are seeing the worst of it, but we're going to feel spillover effects of that, because agriculture in the West is not going to be able to use as much of the water because it's going to be needed for the cities and the population growth that's gone on. And instead, the low-value agriculture is going to begin to move to other places, and those other places are going to be in the U.S. East, and particularly here in the Southeast. And by the same token, those macro changes in the weather patterns, we're going to see less water. And so we're going to begin to have more conflict between agricultural use and urban use, between agricultural use and environmental use, between agricultural use and electric generation, because most electric generation, although some of the new electric generation doesn't require water, but your thermoelectric, all of your fossil fuels, your nuclear power plants, all of those require water for cooling. It doesn't consume a great deal of water, but you need a great deal of water to do the cooling. So the two largest uses, almost 90% of all water use in the United States, is agriculture or thermoelectric cooling right now.
Wow.
And so as more water is being used in the ag sector here, and as the demand for electricity continues to grow, I mean, think of all of your gadgets, think of all of that computing power, all of that requires cooling.
Wow.
And so the water use perspective, or what we can expect, is going to be a greatly increased demand. And the systems we have for water law in the East, for roughly 200 years, we didn't have a lot of water conflict.
Right.
Because there was enough water, shallow groundwater that was available. Rivers were close together. And so if you needed a water source, you had a water source.
Yeah.
And you don't really need a law of allocation if there's enough to go around.
Right. Well, you've certainly taught a class today.
Well,
Professor Abrams. It's fascinating and
as
scary.
We were talking beforehand, I've been writing about water and teaching water law since 1977.
You were way ahead.
Which is, I go back a ways in this field.
We certainly appreciate you coming and sharing your expertise and just turning the lights on for many of us, because it's something that many of us have never contemplated. So thank you for, again. When it comes to water, drinking it, using it, it's a good idea to make yourself aware of our water laws.